Hey everybody, Dimitri here. And if you are interested in racing RedBull Romaniacs, especially as an amateur, then these videos are for you. And before I go any further, I will say this is a huge topic. There's so much to talk about, so much to nerd out on, that I would love it if you guys leave comments, leave thoughts, especially leave questions. So I'm actually going to split this into 3 parts. Just to make it make a little bit more sense and make the sizes of the videos a little bit more manageable. So this video is going to be answering some of the main questions I had before I got a chance to race RedBull Romaniacs and experience it for myself, and also hopefully clear up some of the misconceptions about Romaniacs, because I think the race and maybe hard enduro in general is very misunderstood. In the second video, I'll do a little breakdown of what I did to prepare personally and what I think works based on my experience. And in the third video, I will just go through how the race went and what I will do differently this year, because I'm also racing Romaniacs this coming summer as well. So a little bit of background and history on myself, just you can judge your own experience based on my experience. I would say I am the most average rider you can possibly imagine, which I think is a valuable perspective, or at least I hope you guys will find it valuable if you're seriously considering this race. And another important aspect is that I am from the United States, so a lot of what I talk about will have that kind of coming from the US perspective. So if you're watching this video, you probably are already at least interested in Romaniacs, but I will just talk real quick about why you should want to race it. So first of all, it's a really special event. It's unlike anything that we have here in the United States as far as hard enduro races go, and I think it's almost unlike anything else. If you look at the actual name of it, it's called a hard enduro rally. So you cover a lot of ground. You go places. And it's a very special feeling. It's almost like an adventure ride, but also a hard enduro, because you're going to spend some time on paved roads. You're going to spend some time on 2 tracks. You're going to do gravel roads. You're going to go up and down mountains. You're going to ride alpine terrain, forests, creeks, rivers, everything. There's so much stuff. You're going to ride through cities. You're going to ride through towns. It is amazing. And it's really unlike anything, and I think it's probably a kind of racing that is not going to be around for very long, just because of the world is getting more populated, riding areas are getting shut down, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And as it progresses and kind of keeps moving in that direction, I hope Romaniac stays around for a really long time, but I think just the reality of living on planet Earth is these things will change. The other really special thing about it is that it is a big event. You definitely feel like you're at a big international event. It is not a camp in a field type of GNCC vibe. You're staying in hotels. There's all kinds of signs and posters and everything. It is a huge deal. It feels like a super big sports event. It is. There's tons of fans. There's tons of people, and you're surrounded by a lot of like-minded people from all over the world. So it's almost like an Olympics of dirt bikes, and it doesn't matter what class people are running. People don't go to Romaniacs if they're a bad rider. Pretty much everybody there is a badass. Even if people that are maybe running some of the lower classes, they are still taking some pretty big steps to just be there. So everybody there is a high performer, and you just feel that energy, and it's a really, really special feeling. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about what the hardest parts of RedBull Romaniacs are, because I think this is where there's some misconceptions based on what you see in the coverage and the media and the social media. And if you're coming, especially if you're coming from the US, because our races are very much not like it, our hard enduro races. So I think finding out these things ahead of time will help you better prepare and better train, and also help you kind of set expectations within yourself. Essentially, you're there racing for 5 days. There's one day that is the prologue and 4 off-road days, but you pretty much have to be there for an entire week minimum, probably longer, just because there's a lot of things on the front end that you have to do. You have to get your bike, you have to test your bike, you have to put your parts on, you have to register. There's the city prologue, there's a bunch of meetings, and all of that stuff takes a lot of time, and you're always just kind of running around. Generally, the race days are, there's a prologue, which sets your starting position for the first off-road day, and then there's 4 off-road days. Each one is between 100 and 180 kilometers. So figure, you're probably averaging at least 80 miles a day. So during those off-road days, the biggest thing that you're battling, especially if you're in a class that is challenging for you, is you're actually battling the time bar. You're not racing other people, you're battling the time bar. This is super important. And I really, really encourage you to just always keep that in your mind as you're picking the class, as you're training, that you're always battling the time bar. The way the time bar works is you have a certain amount of time to get from checkpoint to checkpoint every day. And when you start the day, you have a ton of time. You have several hours before the time bar. But as the day progresses, that time bar, especially if you're a little bit slower, that time bar gets closer and closer and closer. And slower is relative to the class, by the way. If you are in an easier class, then it's a little bit easier to stay ahead of the time bar. If you're in a harder class, then it's much harder. But the point being is that you don't have time to mess around. When you're picking the class, and I'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about classes, but when you're picking a class and you're thinking about kind of the terrain, you can't, if you're coming from the United States, you can't think about this as a US hard enduro where you will be just pushing your bike for 3 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours. And that's normal, that's fine. That is not fine at Romaniacs, because if you do that, you're going to get time barred on the first day and you're going to be pretty much done. You can get 2 time bars and still finish, but really if you get time barred on the first day, your chances of finishing the race are pretty bad. So you need to make sure that you are able to pretty much ride or close to it most of the course and keep a good speed going, because even in any classes, you have to go fast. It's even in Iron, the class that I did, which had some challenging sections, but it wasn't too difficult. You are doing essentially like a 4 to 7 hour hare scramble. You have to haul ass. You're not just puttering along between hard sections. You will spend 40 minutes trying to get up some super gnarly thing, and then you have to haul ass to keep ahead of the time bar. So you have to ride fast. So just keep that in mind through kind of the rest of this whole conversation. The second hardest part is that this is a week-long adventure, and it's an endurance race, and it starts pretty much when you leave your house, because it's really, really easy to fall behind on your nutrition and hydration and sleep, because there's so much stuff going on, there's so much excitement. And make sure that you're keeping yourself hydrated and sleep well and all that kind of stuff, because as soon as the off-road days start, you don't have time to do anything. So that's kind of rolls me into my next point, is that this race tests everything. It will test not just your riding ability, but it actually tests your ability to plan, ability to time manage, ability to think on the fly. you have to be really, really good and really organized, because you have to be at the right place at the right time with the right things every single day. There's, whether it's registration, whether it's the city prologue, whether it's the prologue, whether it's one of the race days, and it's there's a lot of variables to it. So you have to be super, super organized. I think those are the kind of non-obvious difficult parts. So the more you can kind of get ahead of them on the front end, the better your experience will be. So the next very common question, I know this was a big one for me, is how much does it cost? And the simple answer is about 10 grand. This is, before you turn the video off and say this is not for me, keep in mind this is a cost of all in. Also US dollars, just for reference. Before you think that this is entirely too much, just consider that you're going to be riding for about 6 days, depending on how many practice days you get with the bike from the company that you're renting with. You should get at least one. You should definitely make sure you get at least one to just shake things down. But you get 6 pretty kick-ass days on the bike. You get to go to a really cool country, and you get to experience a once-in-a-lifetime event. You're there for, like I was mentioning earlier, a week. So realistically, if you start calculating it that way, it's actually not a super, super crazy cost. If you go to one of the local US races, especially one of the bigger ones, with some hefty entry fees like TKO or something like that, and start calculating that, and per day, especially per mile, it's actually not really much different. So typically you'll see, $2,500 is the entry fee. You're going to pay probably about $4,000 for the bike, probably another $5,000 or $500 for tires. It's going to be typically about $1,500 to fly there, and about $1,000 in just miscellaneous expenses. Something to keep in mind is that the entry fee, while it's expensive, it also includes your hotel stays, and it includes food. So you pretty much don't need to spend that much money outside of these items while you're over there. So like I said, this is an all-in price. Common question that comes up, it definitely came up for me, is how good should I be on a dirt bike if I want to do Romaniacs? And the best way I can answer that is you need to go do some races. If you've never raced before at all, anything, then really I would not recommend you entering Romaniacs. And that's not to be mean to people that don't want to be racers, but this is because I think it's really hard for somebody to judge their skill level objectively without doing an actual competition. And that rolls us right into picking the right class, because I think this is probably the most important decision that you will make about your Romaniacs journey, because it will determine what kind of experience you will have. In Romaniacs, there's a class for kind of everybody. You should be a pretty good rider, but you don't have to be necessarily like a world-class champion to participate. There's a lot of fairly regular people out there. And I'll just start from the top. So gold class, this is the top class, and if you have to ask if you should be racing gold class, you probably should not be racing gold class. This is for, you're a world-class hard enduro rider. It is insane how hard this stuff that they have to ride is. It is crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. Silver is a step down from that. It's there's still a lot of hard stuff. We've ridden some silver stuff on the tour that I've done. I would say the difference between gold and silver is that silver is rideable by normal people like myself, but it just takes us a really, really, really long time. Like, I will get my motorcycle through it, but it will take me all day type of thing. And like I mentioned earlier, you can't do that at Romaniacs. You have to be able to efficiently get through the course. So if you're considering silver, you have to be probably at least like a pretty competent A level rider in the US Hard Enduro series, if not really a pro. And if you're not from the US, by the way, typically in the United States, our classes are Pro A, B, C, starting from Pro being the best, A, B, and C in descending order. So C being kind of more novice beginner, B intermediate, A kind of advanced expert. All right, moving on to bronze class. So bronze class is where most amateurs are. And a lot of them don't finish. If you go into the results, you will see that there's a lot of people getting time barred in bronze class, because bronze class is actually pretty difficult, especially if there is some kind of weather event, or you just start falling behind and keep getting stuck. So if you're considering doing bronze class, you should absolutely be racing US Hard Enduros and should be pretty competent at them. You should be finishing laps. I would say I'm doing bronze class this year, and I am a top third B rider in the US Hard Enduro series. And I know a few people that have done bronze class previously, and with differing levels of success, but to be somewhere in the top half of bronze class, you definitely need to be top B US Hard Enduro rider, at least. So iron class is still actually a very, very competitive class, but it's slightly different. There's a lot less hard enduro terrain, and there's a lot of fast riding. So I think if you're like a GNCC or a National Enduro or that type of person, you don't have a lot of hard enduro experience, I think iron is a good place, because you'll have fun, you'll be competitive. Like I said, I am usually if I'm doing regular enduros, I usually podium, and I put it in the top 10 without honestly trying super hard. So I think if you really set your bike up properly and all that kind of stuff, you will have a really good time in iron class. But again, if you don't have any racing experience, I think you will be challenged by the speed that you need to maintain in that class. So I highly recommend, even for iron, to have some racing experience. And you should at least be able to go do an enduro and finish it, even as a C-class rider, but it shouldn't be hard for you to finish an enduro. And Atom class is kind of like the trail rider class. They cut out a lot of the difficult sections. There's still going to be some difficult sections, but they're very, very few. And generally the pace and the time bars and the distances are a bit less than what you have to cover in iron and bronze. So you have just more time to get through the course. And it's still kind of becoming a competitive class. People in it ride very, very fast. So if you're trying to win Atom class, you have to be a fast rider, and probably a pretty good racer. But if you're just trying to get through the course and finish, Atom class is a really good class to consider. So now that you have an understanding of the classes, you have to ask yourself what your goals are going to Romaniacs, and pick the class based on that. You have to ask yourself, do you want to finish? If that's your main goal, then you perhaps want to make sure that you're in a class that it's not going to completely push you to the limit, which is the reason why I chose iron class this past year, is because I wanted to get a finish before I really, really wanted to, go for some really gnarly challenge. So one of the best ways, I feel like, of picking the right class is ask somebody local that you race against. Again, race against, not trail ride with. who has done Romaniacs, ask them and compare yourself to them. The first thing that I think anybody that's considering Romaniacs should do, if at all possible, is go take a tour in Romania. It is by far the best thing that you can do to prepare for this race. Yes, it will cost you a little bit of money, but it will be a kick-ass vacation. You'll absolutely love it. And most of the tour people will be able to take you to different sections so you can, first of all, understand what class you might want to be in. And then also you will understand what your weaknesses are. So more specifically, I feel like the training focus, especially, and I'm talking this from somebody that's competed in iron class and going into bronze class perspective. So if you're doing silver or gold, you might have different ideas and things you need to focus on. So just keep that in mind. But I think you need to be able to ride a long time and efficiently, because you're going to be on the bike for, depending on class and speed, 4 to 10 hours a day, and you need to make it efficient. So you do as much long distance stuff, whether it's off the bike, hiking, running, biking, whatever. Do long races, if you long hair scrambles, enduros, things like that, just to make sure you can ride efficiently. And from a hard enduro perspective, you should be able to ride medium difficulty stuff very efficiently. If you come up on a hill, you should be able to ride up it and not have to push it. If you're going side hills, you should be able to ride them and not have to push it and drag your bike, because you really can't afford to be crashing all the time. There is no sending it at Romaniacs, with very, very few exceptions, like the very finish. If you are going to be throwing your bike, you're going to fail for sure. It's just not feasible to be throwing your bike multiple times a day, because you will break your motorcycle and you will get time barred very, very quickly. So it's Romaniacs it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. There's not going to be like one really gnarly thing. There's going to be 20 medium difficulty things. Physical fitness and endurance should be a priority. I think if you have a good diet, a good mental attitude, a good physical preparation, that like you can do things all day without getting tired, you will have a very, very good experience at Romaniacs, because you're just going to be able to enjoy the terrain, enjoy the riding the bike, and not just be tired all the time and making mistakes. And so finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about the terrain and just the general Romania, because I think that's a big question that I had before I went there. And first of all, I will say Romania is a very easy country to travel in. It's very European. Most people, especially in the tourist industry, hotels, restaurants, stuff like that, speak or understand English. So it's very easy. All your normal stuff is there. You can use your credit card, you can use your phone, you can use your apps on your phone to get around, Google Maps and whatnot. So it's super, super easy. Everybody's really friendly. I felt super safe the entire time I was there. I actually probably felt safer than in most U.S. cities. The people are super nice. I absolutely love it in Romania. I've been twice so far, and I can't wait to go back this summer. And I actually hope to stay there for a little bit longer this summer as well, just because it's such an awesome place. As far as the terrain goes, it is crazy. The hills in Romania are indescribably steep and indescribably long. That is probably the biggest feature of the Romanian riding, is that whereas we just don't have anything like that anywhere I've ridden in North America, because most of our hill climbs, even if we have a big mountain that's 2,000 feet of elevation gain, it's going to be switchbacked a bunch. It's going to go back and forth. So in Romania, you will have a hill climb that will just go on for miles. It will go straight up, no switchbacks. You will just ride a constant gradient up, steep as hell, barely any like little ledge or anything to rest on. And similar thing with descents. There will be descents that will be super super steep, that you will have to walk your bike, and it's not just like walk your bike over a little ledge and get back on and ride. So the other aspect about riding in Romania is that it's very very diverse, and it's very very remote. When you see the videos and the coverage from it, you actually see probably 0.1% of what it actually is. It's you spend a lot of time by yourself or maybe with one other rider. You're barely ever around other people. You very rarely see spectators out in the woods. You're mostly just kind of out there, and you see every type of terrain. I was actually very surprised by how rocky it was. There would be sometimes you'd be riding up a rocky 2-track that's just boulders for 5 miles up a mountain. So miles and miles of climbing over boulders. And or other times you'll be descending down a creek with a bunch of rocks for miles. It's just very, very diverse. Forests. This past year, we were up in the alpine terrain, which looks like a nice, pleasant meadow, but it was really all rocks underneath. So you're riding this like really super, super bumpy alpine terrain for, I don't know, we were probably riding it for almost an hour, and it just beats you to death because you can't go very fast. There's no real trail. There's some goat trails, but you just keep falling into holes, hitting rocks, and all kinds of stuff. Another hard element of this race is that it's a GPS race, and none of the dangers or anything are marked in any way. So if you're coming from the US side, you're used to having caution arrows or some kind of indication that there might be something super sketchy coming up. This does not exist in Romaniacs at all. You're following the GPS and there's some ribbons and stuff, but you might be hauling ass on a 2-track, and around a corner, the 2-track might be completely washed away, and it's like a 40-foot drop. And you will just not know. There's not going to be any warnings. It's really up to you to pay attention and not get yourself buried in a mud bog, run off the side of the mountain, or any number of things. And they can be natural. They could sometimes be man-made. The organization loves putting all kinds of weird stuff at the end of the race. Like they could make you a nice little wooden bridge that's really sketchy, or a teeter-totter or jump, or who knows what else. So if you're observant, you might notice that I'm dressed differently and it's dark outside, and that's because as I was editing this video, I realized that I forgot to mention a really important piece, and that is whether you should rent or bring your own motorcycle. And I think it really depends on where you're coming from. For me, coming from the US, it definitely makes a whole lot more sense to rent a bike. There's a huge amount of, it's a whole industry behind Romaniacs, and there's a huge number of places to rent a motorcycle from, so it doesn't really matter what kind of bike you prefer. I'm sure you can find a place that will rent you that sort of motorcycle, if you want a KTM, a Sherco, Beta, whatever else. And the nice thing about that too, especially if you're a little bit unfamiliar with, if this is the first time you're racing Romaniacs, is that the companies that rent the bikes, a lot of times they have a lot of expertise in it. They will set the bikes up appropriately for the terrain, but of course most of them will do whatever. And it's also just more economical. Shipping your bike across the ocean is pretty expensive, and just that shipping alone is probably going to cost you more than renting a bike there. And not to mention, you're not putting 40, 50 potentially hours on your own motorcycle. So I've had a really good experience with it. I've used Carpathian Adventures in Romania. They've been awesome, and that's who I plan to use going forward as well. But definitely, do your own research. There's lots of great companies out there. And another aspect to the whole bike thing is that a lot of times when you rent the motorcycle from the company, it will either include or be for a slight additional price the servicing of the motorcycle, which is very, very important, because most of the time, A, you won't want to service your own bike, and B, you potentially just won't be able to, because there are service points in the middle of each day, and it is really nice to have a crew waiting there for you, because you get to take 15 to 20 minute break, and you can eat something, you can refill your Camelback, you can do whatever, while your crew replaces your broken shift levers or brake pedals or changes tires or does whatever they need to do, changes air filters, fixes stuff. So it is super, super nice. I honestly could not imagine doing it without that support, and just trying to do it on your own, not having that service park in the middle of the day. It would be very difficult, and then getting back to the paddock in the afternoon or the evening, and having to wash your bike, change tires, potentially change oil, fix stuff, run around trying to find spare parts. It's just it would add a whole new element of difficulty to the race, which I honestly don't think it's worth it. Again, this is my personal opinion, but I would highly recommend considering renting a bike and service, especially your first time out. If you want to do kind of your own thing, once you get some experience, by all means. And obviously that equation might change if you are coming from Europe and you could just drive over there in your own van and have friends and family support you. That's a very different situation. But for me, coming from the US, it's just much easier to have a rental company handle all of this for me. So hopefully you guys made it to the end. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments or anything, this race is awesome and there's a lot to discuss. So definitely leave a comment, and I'd love to hear from you. Hopefully you found this useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the trails.